My sister sabotaged my engagement dinner. I sabotaged her wedding. Me and my sister Tara were never best friends, but we got along fine growing up. She was 3 years older and always had to be first at everything. First to drive, first to graduate, first to get a job. Normal sibling stuff. I did my own thing, went to community college while working at a veterinary clinic, saved money, and eventually got my degree in accounting. Tara went straight to university on our parents' dime and got a marketing degree she never used. When I started dating Ryan, Tara suddenly had opinions about everything. He was too short, his job at the fire department wasn't prestigious enough, and his truck was too old. Meanwhile, she was dating guys for 2 weeks max before they ghosted her. Ryan and I moved in together after 2 years, and Tara showed up uninvited to inspect the place. Said the neighborhood was sketchy and the kitchen was dated. We lived in a nice suburb and had just renovated the kitchen ourselves. When Ryan proposed on our 3rd anniversary at the beach where we first met, I called Tara first because I was so happy. She said congratulations, then asked if I was pregnant. When I said no, she said she was surprised Ryan would commit without a reason. I should have known then she'd try something. We planned a small engagement dinner at my favorite Italian place. Just family and close friends, maybe 20 people. Tara insisted on giving a toast even though that's usually for the wedding. My mom thought it was sweet. Halfway through dinner, Tara stood up with her wine glass. Started talking about how marriage is about trust and honesty. Then she dropped it. Said she didn't feel right celebrating when she'd seen Ryan at a bar last month with some blonde, looking very cozy. The entire table went quiet. Ryan's mom dropped her fork. My dad's face went red. Ryan looked completely confused and said he hadn't been to a bar in months. Tara doubled down, said she had photos. When people asked to see them, she said she deleted them to protect me. My cousin Lisa actually laughed out loud and said Tara was full of it. Tara started crying about how she was just looking out for me, and nobody ever believed her. Ryan pulled out his phone and showed everyone his location history, proving he'd been at work or home every night that month. Tara mumbled that maybe she got the dates wrong. The dinner ended early, with everyone uncomfortable. In the parking lot, Tara admitted she made it up because she felt like Ryan was hiding something. No evidence, just vibes. My mom made her apologize, but Tara said I was overreacting and she was doing her sisterly duty. I stopped talking to her completely. 3 months later, Tara lost her job at the mall because she kept taking longer breaks to flirt with the guy at the phone repair kiosk. She called, crying about rent, and she could stay with us for just a few weeks. I said no. She said I was ruining our relationship over nothing. I hung up. My parents pressured me to forgive her, but I was done. Then something interesting happened. Tara started dating someone new, Jake, who actually stuck around. Within 6 months, they were engaged. She made a huge deal about her perfect relationship and how she found her soulmate. Planned this massive wedding she couldn't afford. Asked our parents for money, they gave her $10,000. Asked our grandparents, they pitched in another $5,000. Still wasn't enough for her dream venue. That's when I got petty. See, Jake's ex-girlfriend Courtney worked at my veterinary clinic. We'd never really talked about him before, but one lunch she mentioned Tara was marrying her ex. I asked how that ended. Courtney said Jake had cheated on her with 3 different women over 2 years, and she had receipts. Actual receipts? Text messages, photos, even videos from security cameras at his apartment complex. Jake was still talking to one of them. I didn't do anything with this information directly, but I did invite Courtney to get drinks with my cousin Lisa, the one who'd called out Tara at my dinner. Lisa had a big mouth and loved drama. Within a week, everyone in our extended family knew about Jake's history. Nobody said anything to Tara directly, but people started declining the wedding invite. Her maid of honor suddenly had a work trip that weekend. Her college friends remembered prior commitments. Even our grandparents said they might be traveling. Tara panicked and asked me to be maid of honor since her first choice dropped out. I agreed sweetly. Spent the next 2 months being the perfect sister. Helped with decorations, went to dress fittings, and planned an amazing bachelorette party. Never mentioned Jake's past once. The wedding day came. Requested Reds is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. I stood at the altar holding Tara's bouquet, watching her and Jake exchange vows in front of everyone. My heart pounded so hard I thought people might hear it. The officiant went through all the standard wedding stuff about love and commitment. When he got to the part about objections, I stayed completely still. Some people in the crowd turned to look at me because everyone knew about the engagement dinner situation. I just smiled and looked down at the flowers. This wasn't going to be some movie moment where I stood up and made a scene. What I had planned was so much better than that. The ceremony kept going and I played my part perfectly. Handed Tara her bouquet at the right moment, straightened her train when she turned around, smiled for all the photos. Nobody could tell what was coming. The cocktail hour started and guests moved to the reception area while the wedding party took pictures. I excused myself and found the wedding coordinator near the bar. She was checking something on her clipboard. I walked up with my brightest smile and told her Tara had a special request she forgot to mention. The coordinator looked confused because usually brides don't forget to mention things on their wedding day. I explained that Tara wanted a surprise slideshow during the reception, something romantic for Jake. She asked why Tara didn't tell her directly. I said Tara was worried she'd get too emotional and ruin the surprise if she had to explain it. The coordinator still looked unsure, so I pulled out the USB drive I'd prepared. Told her it was all ready to go, just needed to be added before the first dance. She took it and said she'd check with the AV guy. I thanked her and walked away before she could ask more questions. I found the photographer next. He was reviewing shots on his camera near the entrance. I used the same story about Tara's surprise slideshow. He seemed less concerned than the coordinator because photographers don't usually handle reception stuff. But I wanted to make sure he knew about it so he'd be ready to capture Tara's reaction. Told him Tara would be so touched and we'd want those photos. He nodded and said he'd position himself near the head table. Perfect. The reception hall looked amazing with all the decorations Tara had stressed over for months. Round tables with white tablecloths and gold centerpieces, string lights across the ceiling, a massive cake in the corner that cost more than my monthly rent. Everyone found their seats and dinner service started. I sat at the head table between Ryan and one of Tara's bridesmaids. Ryan squeezed my hand under the table and asked if I was okay. I told him I was fine. He looked relieved because he probably thought I'd be upset about having to be here after everything with the engagement dinner. If only he knew. Dinner went smoothly with people eating and talking. Then came the toasts. Jake's best man went first with some story about college that got a few laughs. Then it was my turn. I stood up with my champagne glass and looked at Tara. She smiled at me with actual tears in her eyes like she was so happy I was there supporting her. I started talking about sisterhood and how we'd been through everything together growing up. Said that sisters know each other better than anyone else. That we see each other's true selves even when we try to hide things. Tara was nodding and dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. I talked about trust and honesty in marriage. How important it is to really know who you're marrying. The irony wasn't lost on me, but nobody else caught it. I raised my glass and everyone cheered. Tara got up and hugged me tight. Whispered thank you in my ear. I hugged her back and sat down. Ryan leaned over and said that was a beautiful speech. Asked again if I was okay because I seemed tense. I told him I was just tired from all the wedding planning. He squeezed my hand and said we could leave early if I wanted. I shook my head. Told him I wanted to stay for the first dance at least. He smiled and kissed my cheek. Had no idea what was about to happen. The DJ announced it was time for a special presentation before the first dance. The lights dimmed and people got quiet. I felt my pulse racing but kept my face neutral. The screen lit up at the front of the room. For a second, there was just the blue loading screen. Then the first screenshot appeared. Text messages between Jake and someone named Ashley. The messages were from 2 months ago. Very clear, very explicit. Ashley asking when he could come over. Jake saying he'd make up an excuse to leave work early. More messages about meeting at her place. Then a photo of them together that Ashley had sent him. The room went silent. Someone gasped. More screenshots appeared on the screen. Messages with a different woman. Then another. 3 different women total, all from the past 6 months. Some of the messages were from just last week. One showed Jake talking about how he had to go to some wedding thing with his fiancée, but he'd text her after. The timestamps proved everything. This wasn't old history. This was ongoing, constant cheating while he was engaged to Tara. Tara's scream cut through the silence. She stood up so fast her chair fell backward. Jake lunged toward the AV equipment table, but the slideshow kept playing. His parents started yelling at him from their table. Tara's bridesmaids surrounded her, but she collapsed against them, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. The guests sat frozen, staring at the screen, or at each other, or at Jake. Some people had their phones out recording. The slideshow finally ended, but the damage was complete. Every single person in that room had seen everything. My dad figured it out first. He grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise and dragged me away from the head table. Pulled me into the hallway outside the reception room. His face was red and he was breathing heavy. Asked what the hell I did. I told him calmly that I just made sure Tara knew who she was marrying. That unlike her lies about Ryan, this was the truth. He said I went too far. That this was cruel and mean in ways that went beyond anything Tara did at our engagement dinner. I tried to explain that Tara was about to marry a cheater, that I was protecting her. He said I could have told her privately, could have shown her the evidence before the wedding. Instead, I chose to humiliate her in front of everyone she knew on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Ryan found us in the hallway. He pulled me outside to the parking lot. His hands were shaking and his voice had this anger in it I'd never heard before. Asked what the hell I was thinking. I explained about Courtney and the evidence and how Jake was a serial cheater. Said I was protecting Tara in a way. Ryan stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Said that protecting her would have been telling her privately, not humiliating her in front of 100 people, not destroying her wedding day, not using her pain as revenge for something she did months ago. I tried to argue, but he just shook his head. Said he needed a minute and walked away. Inside the reception hall, everything had fallen apart. Guests were leaving in small groups, talking in hushed voices. Some people were crying. Jake was surrounded by his groomsmen near the bar. Could hear him trying to defend himself, saying the messages were old or taken out of context. Nobody was buying it. Tara had locked herself in the bridal suite and wouldn't come out. Her bridesmaids were taking turns knocking on the door. The wedding coordinator looked lost, not sure what to do with the rest of the planned reception. The cake sat untouched. The DJ had packed up his equipment. My mom found me in the parking lot. She walked right up to me and slapped me across the face. Hard. I'd never seen her hit anyone in my life. She told me I was cruel and heartless. That what I did was unforgivable. I tried to explain about Jake cheating, but she said she didn't care. Said that even if everything in that slideshow was true, the way I handled it was wrong. That I'd destroyed my sister's wedding out of spite. That I was vindictive and mean and she was ashamed of me. Ryan came back and said we were leaving. We got in his truck and drove home in complete silence. He wouldn't look at me. His jaw was clenched the whole drive. When we got home, he went straight to the guest bedroom. Didn't say goodnight. Didn't say anything. Just closed the door. I sat alone in the kitchen with all the lights off. My phone kept buzzing with messages. Texts from family members calling me psychotic and evil, saying I destroyed Tara's life over a grudge. That what I did was worse than anything Tara ever did to me. That I was cruel and vindictive and they wanted nothing to do with me. I turned my phone face down but could still hear it buzzing. Expected to feel good about what I did. Expected to feel like I'd evened the score. Instead, I just felt hollow and shaky. Ryan came out of the guest bedroom around 7 in the morning. I hadn't slept at all. He made coffee and sat across from me at the kitchen table. Said he'd been thinking all night about what I did. That it revealed something about my character that scared him. The woman who could plan that level of public humiliation wasn't someone he was sure he wanted to marry. I tried to argue that Tara deserved it after what she did at our engagement dinner. Ryan said 2 wrongs don't make a right. That what Tara did was bad, but what I did was so much worse. She told one lie at a dinner. I destroyed her wedding in front of everyone she knew. He said he needed space to think about our relationship, about whether he could trust someone capable of that kind of revenge. 3 days went by with Ryan sleeping in the guest bedroom and me going through the motions at work like a robot. My phone stayed face down on my desk because every time it buzzed, I knew it was another family member telling me how terrible I was. Then Lisa called during my lunch break and I almost didn't answer. Her voice came through shaky and wet from crying. She told me Courtney was a mess, that she'd been calling Lisa every night saying she felt sick about what happened. Courtney thought I'd use the information to warn Tara privately, maybe pull her aside before the wedding and show her the evidence so she could make her own choice. Instead, I turned it into a public show that destroyed Tara in front of everyone. Lisa said Courtney kept saying she never meant for it to go that way, that she just wanted Tara to know the truth about Jake. Then Lisa started crying harder and said she felt terrible too. Said she knew she had a big mouth and loved drama, but she never thought spreading gossip about Jake would lead to what I did. Now family members were blaming her for her part in everything, saying she helped me destroy Tara's wedding. I tried to tell Lisa it wasn't her fault, that I made my own choices, but she just kept crying and said she had to go. My mom called that evening while I was staring at leftover Chinese food I couldn't eat. Her voice was cold and flat, nothing like her normal warm tone. She told me Tara hadn't left her apartment since the wedding day. Just stayed inside with the curtains closed, not answering calls or texts from anyone except Mom. Jake moved out the same night, grabbed his stuff while Tara was locked in the bathroom and left his key on the counter. They lost all the deposits on their honeymoon to Hawaii, lost the deposit and first month's rent on the new apartment they were supposed to move into together. Mom said the landlord wouldn't give any of it back even with what happened. Tara was devastated about Jake cheating, but she was even more destroyed by me humiliating her like that. By her own sister doing that to her in front of everyone she knew. Mom's voice cracked when she said several family members had stopped talking to her and Dad completely because of what I did. My aunt and uncle weren't returning their calls. My grandparents said they needed space. All because their daughter was cruel enough to destroy her sister's wedding in the worst possible way. I tried to explain about Jake being a cheater, but Mom cut me off. Said it didn't matter what Jake did, what I did was worse. Then she hung up. Ryan's mom called 2 days later. I saw her name on my phone and my stomach dropped because Ryan's mom was always nice to me, always welcoming and kind. Her voice was gentle when she started talking, which somehow made it worse. She said she understood I was hurt by what Tara did at our engagement dinner, that what Tara said was wrong and hurtful and shouldn't have happened. But my response was way out of proportion. It was cruel in a way that scared her. She said Ryan had been staying with Nathan and calling her every night, talking about whether I was the person he thought I was, whether someone who could plan that kind of calculated revenge would be a good partner for the long term, whether he could trust me not to do something like that again if we had a fight or disagreement. Her words hit different from my mom's slap or my dad's silence. She wasn't yelling or punishing me. She was genuinely worried about her son marrying someone capable of what I did. When I tried to defend myself, she just said she hoped I'd really think about my actions and what they revealed about my character. Then she said she loved me, but she understood why Ryan needed space. The call ended, and I sat on the kitchen floor crying for an hour. 2 weeks after the wedding, my dad left me a voicemail. I listened to it 3 times, trying to understand the flat, factual tone of his voice. He said Tara had a panic attack, so bad that Mom had to take her to the emergency room. Her heart was racing. She couldn't breathe. She thought she was dying. The doctor said it was anxiety and sent her home with medication. Now she was taking pills for anxiety and depression, seeing a therapist twice a week. Dad said the therapist told them the public humiliation triggered something deeper in Tara, something connected to her lifelong need for outside approval and validation. The way I exposed her and Jake's relationship in front of everyone hit her in a place that was already damaged. I didn't just ruin her wedding, I actually hurt her mental health in ways that would take months or maybe years to fix. Dad's voice stayed cold and factual through the whole message. No emotion, no anger, just information delivered like a weather report. That somehow felt worse than if he'd yelled. The voicemail ended with him saying he had to go, and the beep echoed in my ear. Ryan came home on a Tuesday afternoon when I was supposed to be at work. I'd called in sick because I couldn't stop crying, and my manager told me to take a few days. I heard his truck in the driveway and thought maybe he was coming back, that we'd talk and figure things out. Instead, he walked in with an empty duffel bag and headed straight for our bedroom, started pulling clothes from his drawers and packing them carefully. I followed him, asking what he was doing, even though I knew. He said he was staying with Nathan for a while, that he needed to figure some things out. Needed to decide if he could marry someone who did what I did. He kept folding shirts and rolling socks while he talked. Said he kept thinking about our future kids, about whether I'd use the same tactics in other fights, whether I'd teach our children that revenge was okay when someone hurt you, whether he could trust me not to turn that calculating cruelty on him someday, if things got bad between us. I started begging him to stay, to sit down and talk it through. Reached for his arm, but he pulled away. He said he couldn't even look at me right now without feeling disappointed. The word disappointed hit harder than if he'd said he was angry or hurt. He zipped up the bag, grabbed his toiletries from the bathroom, and walked out. His truck started up and pulled away, and I stood in our bedroom surrounded by his half-empty drawers. I started calling family members, trying to explain my side. Called my aunt, who'd always been nice to me growing up. She answered, but her voice was ice. I tried to tell her about Jake being a cheater, about all the evidence Courtney had, about how Tara was going to marry someone who'd definitely cheat on her too. My aunt cut me off and said even if everything about Jake was true, there were 100 better ways to handle it. I could have told Tara privately, could have shown her the evidence before the wedding, could have talked to her like a sister instead of destroying her in front of everyone. Then she said I was officially uninvited from Thanksgiving and Christmas unless I made a real apology to Tara. Not a fake sorry, a genuine one where I took responsibility for what I did. I said Tara never really apologized for the engagement dinner, just mumbled something in the parking lot after Mom forced her. My aunt's voice got harder. Said what Tara did was one incident of bad judgment, maybe jealousy, maybe stupidity. What I did was planned psychological warfare over months. Those were her exact words. Psychological warfare. Then she hung up. I called my uncle and he didn't answer. Called my cousin and she sent me to voicemail. Called my grandma and she picked up but said she couldn't talk to me right now, that she was too upset. The rejection from everyone piled up until I stopped trying. Courtney texted me asking to meet for coffee. I almost said no because I didn't want to face anyone else telling me how terrible I was. But I went anyway. Met her at the place near the clinic on a Saturday morning. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping well. Ordered a coffee and sat across from me in the corner booth. Started talking about how she'd been thinking a lot about why she gave me that information about Jake. Admitted she was still bitter about how he treated her, how he cheated and lied and made her feel crazy for suspecting him. She wanted him to face consequences. Wanted someone to hold him accountable for being a serial cheater. But she never imagined I'd use it the way I did. Never thought I'd turn it into a weapon to destroy Tara at her own wedding. Courtney said she'd been in therapy for a year dealing with trust issues from Jake, and her therapist helped her realize something. Using someone else's pain for revenge doesn't actually heal anything. It just creates more pain and turns you into someone you don't recognize. She looked at me when she said that last part. Not mean or judging, just sad. She said she felt responsible for giving me the ammunition even though she didn't pull the trigger. We sat there for a while not talking, just drinking coffee and watching people walk by outside. When we left, she hugged me and said she hoped I'd figure things out. I went home and couldn't stop thinking about what she said. I forced myself to really think about what I did and why. Sat down at the kitchen table with a notebook and wrote it all out. The engagement dinner, the humiliation, the anger I felt when Tara lied about Ryan, how I wanted her to hurt the way she hurt me. But when I looked at what actually happened, humiliating Tara didn't make me feel better. It didn't fix the engagement dinner or erase what she did. If anything, I felt worse because now Ryan was gone, my whole family hated me, and Tara was on medication for anxiety and depression. I hurt her way more than she hurt me. The engagement dinner was one night of discomfort and awkwardness that we recovered from. What I did would follow Tara for years, maybe forever. Everyone at that wedding would remember her as the bride whose sister exposed her groom as a cheater during the reception. I took something from her that she could never get back. I sat there writing and crying, finally understanding that I'd become worse than the person I was mad at. Spent the next few days writing a letter to Tara. Threw away 6 drafts before I got it right. No excuses about Jake being a cheater. No bringing up the engagement dinner or trying to justify what I did. Just taking full responsibility for my actions and acknowledging that what I did was cruel and wrong. I mailed it to her apartment and didn't expect a response. 3 months went by. Ryan stayed with Nathan and we texted occasionally about practical stuff like bills and mail. My family stayed distant. Work became my only routine. Then Tara texted me saying she'd read my letter and asking if I wanted to meet. We picked a coffee shop halfway between our places, neutral ground where neither of us had memories. I got there early and watched her walk in. She looked different, thinner, tired, but also somehow more solid than before. We sat down and for a minute neither of us said anything. Then Tara started talking. Said yes, she was jealous of my relationship with Ryan. Had been for years. Jealous that I seemed to have my life together while she was struggling. The engagement dinner thing came from that jealousy mixed with some weird protective instinct that made no sense even to her. She'd spent years feeling like she was in competition with me because of her own problems with needing to be first, needing to be better, needing outside validation that she was worth something. The therapist was helping her see that pattern. I told her I let my anger turn me into someone worse than the person I was mad at. That I was genuinely sorry for the public humiliation and the panic attacks and the medication and everything that came after. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. Not just surface stuff. It wasn't comfortable and we both cried. But it was honest in a way we'd never been with each other. When we left, we didn't hug or make plans to hang out, just acknowledged that we'd both screwed up in different ways and we'd both have to live with that. I showed Ryan the letter I wrote to Tara. Sent him a photo of it along with a long text explaining that I'd started seeing a therapist to figure out why I thought revenge was acceptable. Why I let anger override everything else. Asked if he'd be willing to try couples counseling. He didn't respond for 3 days. Then he texted saying, okay, he'd try counseling, but he wasn't making any promises. We found a counselor who specialized in relationship issues and started going once a week. The sessions were brutal. Ryan made me confront how my actions revealed a capacity for cruelty that genuinely scared him. The counselor asked hard questions about my anger, my sense of justice, my willingness to hurt someone who hurt me. Made me look at patterns in my life where I'd held grudges or cut people off completely instead of working through conflict. Ryan talked about trust and whether he could build a life with someone who might turn that calculating revenge on him someday. I had to sit there and listen and accept that I'd damaged something that might never fully heal. Over the next few months, I worked to prove through my actual behavior that I could handle conflict differently. That I could choose talking things through over getting even. That I could be someone worthy of trust again. It was slow and hard, and some days Ryan looked at me like he was still deciding if he wanted to stay. But we kept showing up to counseling and kept trying. Thanksgiving at my parents' house felt like walking through a minefield where everyone knew the mines were there, but pretended they didn't exist. My aunt who'd uninvited me from Christmas showed up but sat at the far end of the table and didn't look at me once during the meal. My uncle made small talk about the weather and football scores, but avoided anything that might lead to real conversation. My mom set the table with careful precision, making sure I sat between Ryan and my dad, probably to prevent any awkward seating arrangements. She spoke to me in this polite, distant voice she'd use with a stranger, asking if I wanted more stuffing or another roll. My dad tried harder, asking about work and how the apartment was, but even his questions felt rehearsed, like he'd practiced what safe topics he could bring up. Tara wasn't there. My mom mentioned she was spending the holiday with friends, and nobody asked any follow-up questions. The empty chair where she usually sat seemed louder than any conversation happening at the table. My cousin who'd helped me spread the gossip about Jake showed up late and left early, barely making eye contact. Half the usual crowd was missing, and the people who did come spent most of dinner looking uncomfortable. Dessert happened fast, with people making excuses about early mornings or long drives home. Ryan and I left before anyone could suggest watching football or playing cards like we used to. In the car, he asked if I was okay, and I told him I was fine, which we both knew was a lie. The truth was I'd expected some people to stay mad, but seeing it play out, watching my own family treat me like a polite stranger, made it real in a way I hadn't been ready for. Christmas was worse because my mom called 2 weeks before, and very carefully suggested that maybe Ryan and I could come by on Christmas Eve instead of Christmas Day, since Tara would be there on the actual holiday. She phrased it like she was offering me a choice, but we both knew what she was really saying. I told her Christmas Eve was fine. Ryan squeezed my hand after I hung up and said at least we'd have Christmas morning to ourselves. We showed up on Christmas Eve with presents and homemade cookies I'd stress-baked the night before. My parents' house was decorated the same way it had been every year, but everything felt off. My dad hugged me at the door and held on a little too long, like he was trying to make up for something. We sat in the living room opening presents, and my mom gave me a scarf she'd knitted and a gift card to the bookstore I liked. Safe, thoughtful gifts that didn't require much conversation. I gave them a framed photo of me and Ryan from a hiking trip we'd taken in the fall, and my mom put it on the side table instead of with the other family photos on the mantel. We stayed for exactly 2 hours, then made excuses about needing to get home to feed the cat. My mom walked us to the door and hugged me, and for a second she held on tight and I thought she might say something real. But she just pulled back and told me to drive safe. On the drive home, I cried for the first time since the wedding. Not because anyone had been cruel, but because being treated with careful politeness by my own mother hurt worse than I'd expected. Ryan moved back in after New Year's, but things weren't the same between us. He kept his stuff partially packed in boxes in the guest room closet, like he wasn't fully committed to staying. We went to counseling every week, and slowly, he started unpacking one box at a time. But there were moments when I'd catch him watching me with this look that wasn't quite trust, like he was waiting to see if I'd do something vindictive again. We had a fight in March when I got mad at a coworker for taking credit for my project presentation, and I vented to Ryan about wanting to forward the email chain to our boss to prove it was my work. He got quiet and asked if I was planning to humiliate her publicly or if I could just talk to her directly. The question landed like a punch because I heard what he was really asking. I ended up talking to the coworker in private, and we sorted it out, and Ryan relaxed a little after that. But I knew he was watching, waiting to see who I was when I got angry. The wedding had shown him something about me that scared him, and now I had to prove through 1,000 small choices that I could handle conflict without turning cruel. I saw Tara at a family barbecue in June, 6 months after the wedding. My mom had warned me she'd be there and asked if I could handle it. I said yes. Tara showed up with a guy I didn't recognize, someone new she was dating. He looked normal, friendly, nothing like Jake. She saw me across the yard and we both froze for a second. Then she walked over. We stood there awkwardly until she said hi and asked how I was. I said I was good, asked how she was. She said she was doing better, that therapy was helping. We talked for maybe 5 minutes about surface stuff. Her new job at a marketing firm, my promotion at the clinic. Nothing deep. Nothing about the wedding or the engagement dinner or the years of competition and cutting remarks. Just two people who used to be sisters having the kind of conversation you'd have with someone you barely know. Her new boyfriend came over and she introduced us, and he seemed nice. Genuinely nice in a way that made me hope she'd found someone decent. When they left, she said it was good to see me, and I said the same, and we both meant it in the most minimal way possible. Ryan asked later if I was okay, and I told him the truth. That it was weird, but manageable. That Tara and I would probably never be close, but at least we could be in the same space without everything exploding. He nodded and said, that was probably the best outcome I could hope for given everything that happened. I knew he was right. Some things you break so badly they can't be fixed, just carefully managed.